Sitting at the western edge of the experimental coastal erosion zone and at the heart of the village controversy is the Ocean Mist, an iconic beachside bar, eatery, and nightclub. This area has been made a special area management plan, which has given you the ability to apply for different types of coastal erosion protection measures. You haven't filed for anything.
The way I understand it, again, my attorney could explain it better. The property to the west of me, Mary Carpenter's historic seawall, is a different issue. There's a wall there. You go under a maintenance permit. You could have did it last year or 5 years ago or 5 years. That's a separate issue. The new experimental is, yes, that's in that same zone, but it's more like where the Ocean Mist is to the east of me, is where those experimental measures. I think that's, this is all new, so like I'm not really versed on it, but it's like it's the section from Mary's historic wall to the east. This way, that would be the experimental new zone, so to speak.
Okay, so with your property actually sitting in that experimental zone, and because we're sitting pretty much in the water at this point in time, do you have any plans to pursue any experimental measures?
My plans are to get to June 24th because if I think Steve Alford said the next construction time is October 15th. So October 15th, technically, if the construction starts, his engineer in open discussion said the Ocean Mist might not make it through or will not make it through the construction phase. So pretty much the way I look at it is, why should I think about what I'm going to do a year or two from now when I possibly could be closed, or highly likely if it goes forward that I'll be closed soon after that October date.
On June 24th, the CRMC met under Superior Court-ordered remand. The reason? To determine whether the town of South Kingstown's plans for the 202-foot sheet pile construction seawall had addressed all reasonable environmental impact mitigation measures and use conflicts. Tony Afanya, CRMC member, questioned Finnegan about the non-permitted vertical piling wall upon his property. The wall, made of creosote-soaked telephone poles, would not have been permitted, according to Afanya.
I saw what looked to be, I'm not an expert, but I did spend 8 or 10 years in construction, so I'll say they looked to me to be almost brand new creosoted vertical stockade timbers holding back the earth underneath the building. I saw what looked to be almost brand new cross-braced pilings underneath the deck and underneath the front of the building itself. So my first thought when we came back to this discussion was that the easy thing would be to tie a return from the town wall into that existing stockade, what Mr. Teich was just referring to as a vertical wall underneath the building. But then I learned a couple of things. I learned that we don't allow creosote timbers to be used in locations like that. We also would never have permitted the particular kind of wall that was erected, an unsupported vertical wall driven down into the sand, very unstable. Have you identified the particular unpermitted structures that you've built to protect your property at the risk of everybody else's property? I know that's a leading question, but what have you done to protect everybody else?
Finnegan's response created a moment of confusion among council members, some who were unaware of further vertical wall construction on properties along the beach in the experimental coastal erosion area.
Everybody just put the same wall in the past 3, 4, 5 months. Like the other 10 houses did it.
Really?
I think.
Grover Fugate, CRMC director, believed that the walls Finnegan spoke of were standard stockade fencing. When Finnegan corrected the director and noted that his neighbors had also installed vertical telephone pole walls, Fugate said there would be further enforcement action.
No, it's the same telephone pole.
Well, my concern is that we're being asked by the judge to consider the environmental implications of the particular proposal that the town has brought to us. Before we get there, I'm looking at the environmental impacts of all of the existing structures that are already there. Not the wall that's proposed, but the existing structures. It seems to me that they're subject to exactly the same complaints that we've heard from
you watched from Depot, you said just recently?
2012.
If you walk down there right now from Depot,
recent? It's when I walked it.
Okay, so if you walk down there today, from the existing wall that you walked around, the first wall to the east of me, that Harold built, from that wall on, every single house, up until my, as you proposed, my illegal wall, has the same exact wall, except for it's green, not stockade fence, it's green telephone poles, pressure-treated telephone poles, so there's 7 properties that's complete, that's there, that was permitted, you can answer that. Well, how is it?
In fact, the council will be seeing removal orders very shortly.
Those are also illegal.
I was told by the property owners that it was under a experimental beach type of, that's what I was told.
Fran O'Brien, owner of Tara's Tipperary Tavern at 907 Matunic Beach Road, directly adjacent to Finnegan's property to the east, addressed the full council, calling for a common ground community solution. O'Brien, whose historic Irish pub has sustained damage from ocean storms and hurricanes, acknowledged the subject of the meeting, the environmental impact of the town's planned seawall, putting forth his preference for a stone revetment seaward of the Department of Transportation funded and approved project.
My feeling personally is, I'm not an engineer either. Clearly it sounds like straight up walls create problems. I think the most important question then is, where's that located? If it causes damage to the left and right, and if it's forward, seaward, the stone revetments. There's a revetment to the west. There's also a revetment to the east. And getting scoured in between, I think. So I would favor doing it in front, as Kevin said earlier, then it's deflected along the beach as opposed to being behind the building.
Steve Alfred, town manager, explained the town's position predicated on public health and safety, with the exposed road as the only access for emergency personnel in and out of the village.
The elevation of that wall is insufficient for the wave crest of what that could be as a maintenance permit. That we're still going to, in hurricane conditions, have an overtopping which would then hit the road because the concrete blocks are in fact in a position where some of them are starting to fall into the headland is totally gone in that area. So there's two things. If you do a maintenance permit here, you've still got the overtop and the public safety is at risk. If you were to reconstruct a new revetment, that new revetment would be in the wet, below high water mark. It's going to be a Corps of Engineers application and review. Our concern is that in the last 2 years, we've lost another 15 feet of headland. There's no more headland to lose.
CRMC, in a 5-4 split vote, affirmed the town's environmental impact plan that included sand replenishment and beach access as incorporated into the previously approved seawall construction project.